Hello, hello, hello. I'm Suri and I'm back again with Cremechiss's movie of the week. If you are new to this channel, welcome, welcome, welcome. And if you've been listening to us for the past couple of months, all I want to say is I love you and I adore you, and you're possibly my favorite person in this whole world. We are in the month of January 2023, and it is the time for new beginnings. It is a time for fresh starts, to try something new and different. And while I'm not much for New Year's resolutions, I'm all for clean slate new beginnings. In my life, most of the times, when I have tried something new and different, in a very cliche manner, it has almost always happened when I was in love. And I I tried something different because I had this incurable crush on someone. And this is a repeated pattern I've noticed about myself, that it always happens, when there's like this crush, this all-consuming crush, this all-consuming love you have for a person where you can't shake that emotion. And it's the kind of crush that overstays its welcome, like you have to truly check yourself and make sure it doesn't become an obsession. That kind of crush. And when you're younger and you're discovering these feelings for the first time, it is all the more overwhelming. So, for the most part, I believe that when a person discovers the feeling of love or, the feeling of a crush, they go a little outside of their boundaries, a little outside of their comfort zone. And I think that is because love itself is a very uncomfortable emotion. It's this pathetic mess of things that makes you have feelings, and having feelings is embarrassing, isn't it? It makes you blush. It makes you kind of transparent because your feelings kind of become obvious to the entire world. Even if you're trying very hard to hide, who you're crushing on, or how intensely you feel for them. And every time I have been in love and I have made those puppy eyes at someone, I have done something to improve myself to get their attention. And generally, what happens is, you put on a pretty dress, you get a new hairstyle, you put on nice perfume, basically anything, right, that will get the other person's attention towards you. However, if the object of your desires is someone that is in close proximity and you know them in some way or form, and and perhaps this happens when you start evolving past your appearances, right? Um it it kind of becomes this need where you want to take on interests that your crush has. So I noticed this happening in my teen years a lot, where if my crush was into hiking, then I figured, oh, I should try hiking. It could be fun, and maybe I don't enjoy it at the end of it, but I'll try it anyway because I'm looking for ways to get closer to them, to feel some sort of commonness with them. And this happens pretty much over anything, right? If the person you like really likes music, you will start looking up obscure bands, and maybe they'll share their favorite music, their musical artists with you, their favorite songs with you, and you'll start thinking, oh my god, why haven't I heard of this? Why isn't this part of my music collection? I'm so useless. Why don't I know as much as my crush does? And that, of course, happens because you believe on some level that you're not good enough for your crush, and that's why crushes exist, right? Because you think it will not work out, and that's the agony of that process. And it's all very beautiful in the end because it gets you to do new stuff. You're adapting to things that you have never tried before. And that journey makes you somewhat more secure in yourself, and perhaps even gives you the strength to finally admit to your crush that you really like them. And this week's movie is all about admitting through courage, through trial and error to your crush that you feel feelings for them. And this week's movie is the Peanuts movie. I know it is an odd choice considering it is based on, kids and kids' characters, and it comes from comics that I obsessively read as a child, and I would wait for, the newspaper section, so I could just read those comics. And I think there is something to be said about the movie itself. First of all, it is beautiful, it is scenic. There is nothing I have seen in terms of, like when you draw snow images, or you give a snow environment, it generally gives you a bit of a dreary, melancholic feeling. But the Peanuts universe is not that way, even though every scene is happening in snow, with snow rings and snowballs and snowmen. And there is something so beautiful about the way they have, done this movie. And I never really saw Peanuts in color. I only saw, the black and white comics, the black outline with the white background in the newspaper, or the grayish color of the newspaper. I never ever saw Peanuts in color up until this movie. So for me it was a very brand new experience. And if you've not read the comics, that's absolutely fine. It is still a very beautiful, welcome universe, and it'll definitely make you feel all kinds of warm and fuzzy. It's the perfect movie for the beginning of the year. And what this movie does is it kind of focuses entirely on self-improvement in the passage of love. And it, considering that it is very picturesque, it has all of these soothing panels. And even if you didn't have your childhood, around snow, like me, because I grew up in a tropical place, it still makes you feel like that was your childhood. There is some sense of familiarity or nostalgia that is associated with it, that makes you feel like, I did all this when I was a child. I played with my friends like this. I waited for snow day. Where I come from, even if it rained like crazy, the school would never be called off. But the movie kind of starts with, oh my gosh, it's a snow day, everything's been snowed in, there's going to be no school today. And the entry into that universe is so beautiful because everybody kind of rushes out of their homes and they start playing in the snow, and it's colorful. And and you get to see all these different kinds of kids, like gearing up to enjoy this day that has randomly been given to them for pleasure, and they can miss school if they like. So what I truly enjoy about the feeling of the movie is that you can perhaps relive a certain part of your childhood which involved possibly growing up. And when I say growing up, I don't mean, oh my God, now you're becoming an adult or something. Rather, the part of childhood that you remember, because there are lots of portions of childhood which we outgrow of, right? If you're 6 or 7 years of age, you'll have certain core memories, but you won't remember everything. Versus when you're a bit older, you'll have a more detailed account in your brain about, what happened, who your friends were, who you associated with, who were the people you got along with, anyone you got into arguments with, anyone who bullied you. And you get to see those tiny elements because when I was growing up and I would have homework due, or I'd not done my homework for the day, uh, I would sit near the window where I could hear my friends playing in the background. And my mom would like make this face at me and go, no, you're not going down to play with your friends. You have to finish your homework today. And there's this scene in the movie where Charlie Brown, who's the protagonist of the movie, kind of like, stumbles out of bed because his friends are calling out to him and they're like, come out and come play with us. And it's almost an invitation to the people who are watching the movie, like come join us, and let's make these memories. And of course the comics are, have always kept this thematic, let's talk about the stuff that happens between the classes, between the grades, between the homework. And this is why this movie is adorable. So Charlie Brown, the protagonist of the movie, um he's a he's a sweet boy. He means well, but Charlie Brown has what we would call a messed up reputation. Charlie Brown fails at things, and he fails a lot. And he's a person who'll always make mistakes. So when there's a snow day, like it was on the day the movie began, he chose to fly a kite, and it was clearly not a day to fly a kite, but he chose to fly a kite because he was certain that it would work out on that day, which means he has tried several times before and failed because he mentions a kite eating tree. And as he attempts to do that, he causes some amount of collateral damage where all the kids kind of get pulled into his attempt, and he fails again. And this is not the story of an underdog, right? Because an underdog is a person who has some skills, but Charlie Brown has no skills. He's just a person who never stops trying. And there is this amazing element of storytelling which I've seen in this kind of movie, these kind of movies where they show us that you don't really need to, have a build up for a character. Sometimes there is no context to anything. There is no foreshadowing. It is exactly what it is. It's just simple storytelling which introduces us to characters that don't have any history, because they're kids, and that in itself is a lot of fun. So as Charlie Brown is, kind of licking his wounds, accepting that he can't fly his kite on snow day, he realizes that there's like this moving truck that is, kind of parking across his home. And it turns out there's a new girl. And this new girl is possibly, their age, and she's possibly going to go to the same school as Charlie Brown and his friends. And um, you see this inner monologue happening where Charlie Brown decides that, oh my gosh, I would love to get to know this new girl. And the audience never gets to see who she is. We can only see the back of her head, and she has really pretty red hair. But Charlie Brown sees who she is, and is immediately smitten by her. And the monologue is very adorable because he says, oh my gosh, this is a new person, a new slate, something that I never ever thought I would have an opportunity, to prove myself fresh to someone, because all his friends know way too much about him, right? Like that's what happens when you grow up together, and your friends, you're very close, but there's a good chance that your friends know your deep dirty dark secrets, and they know everything about you, which gives you no scope to possibly try something new. And because Charlie Brown's friends don't think very highly of him, he wants to take on this opportunity to, start afresh and perhaps build his reputation in a very good light with this girl who has clearly just moved in. And considering that he's had many failures, this is his chance to be the shiny, new, successful being and, put his best foot forward. But Charlie Brown's character, like I said before, is not about succeeding. It's about what happens when you fail and to be okay with that. And not to just sit in the failure, but to try and and overcome it and try something different the next time. So Charlie Brown sees that, you know, this girl is very sophisticated. She's very classy. The way she moves, the way the air shifts around her, the music changes when she walks by. So she's clearly very important to him. And anybody who's had a crush at that age, you know that, you're just kids or you're just teenagers. And there's something very special about that because it is the first of its kind. And it has never happened to you before. And you don't know what to do with that feeling because you might see your parents sharing, an occasional sign of affection with each other, like a kiss or hand holding. You may have older cousins or friends who talk about dating. You'll watch stuff in the movies, but you'll never really understand it till it happens to you. And now Charlie Brown, just by catching a glimpse of this person, has these odd feelings for her. And it turns out that she's also in his class. So when she gets introduced into the class and everybody, says, oh my God, she seems so nice. She seems so pretty. And when she sits on her desk, her pencil, I think, rolls off her desk. And this is what I love about, the little details about these characters. When you're in love with a person, you look for the slightest common ground, like the slightest thing that makes you similar. And it's such a silly thing because when her pencil rolls off of her desk and it reaches Charlie Brown's feet, he notices chew marks or nibble marks on the pencil, and he's like, "Oh my God, she nibbles her pencil just like me. We are clearly soulmates." And such a silly thing to find some kind of similarity with, but the premise that people who fall in love and they look for, the silliest detail that binds them together. Although love, doesn't work out that way. Love is not about the stuff that makes you similar. Charlie Brown kind of prepares for this talent show. He finds out there's a talent show and he practices his magic tricks, and he actually gets it down to a pat. He does it really well. And it turns out on the day of the talent show, his sister needs help with her act. So he abandons his act altogether just to help her out. And there's something to be said about this when you have a crush on a person and you have to eventually, work up the nerve and admit it to them. You enjoy delaying the process because he will have another chance with the redhead girl, and he will figure out a way to tell her how he feels. And if not through the talent show, through something else. And lo and behold, another opportunity does present itself. And because this is Charlie Brown, we cannot forget good old Snoopy. And Snoopy is always there and, trying to help him and nudge him. And he's like, why don't you just take flowers for her? Why don't you just, go and, ring her doorbell? And Charlie freaks out every time. And he decides, oh my gosh, how about I impress her with the winter dance, because there's a winter dance that shows up. And Charlie Brown actually practices. And we get to see Snoopy kind of in the background typing up this story that he has, developed in his mind about the Red Baron, his arch nemesis. And Snoopy takes instances from his story to help Charlie Brown. So Snoopy clearly seems like a well-traveled, well-adjusted person, and he helps him practice his dance. And Charlie Brown again practices his dance and gets really good at this. And this is why I love this form of storytelling, because they show us, in your naivety, when you're very madly in love with someone, you build these fantasy scenarios in your head. And Charlie Brown is like, oh my gosh, she's going to win the best dancer award for the girls, and I'm going to do it for the boys. And then we're going to dance together, and we're going to be a perfect couple. And he builds up this entire scenario in his head. And he's convinced that this dance is going to be his one opportunity to truly impress her. So he gets really good. And now when you see the movie, you realize that he picked up two skills. He actually practiced his magic tricks and he figured out how to, do kind of a stage performance in front of a large audience. And then he practiced dancing, and now he picked up another skill where, whether or not it works out with this girl, he took steps to improve himself. And he did not need it. He could have just walked up to her and asked her out. But he chose to add some stuff to his skill set so that he could come off as a better person with a better personality. And this is why the movie is so innocent, because this is exactly how we build our fantasy in our head, where we think that we need to be better versions of ourselves to impress someone, when anything you do to better yourself is just for yourself. It's just selfish. It's because you, in your ego, in your selfishness, want to come across as something greater than you are. And while that is in some form, some form of narcissism is of course there in that. But when you see Charlie Brown's character, because he's a child and he doesn't understand what he needs to do to kind of maybe get over his insecurities and finally talk to her, you'll see that he goes into painstaking, efforts to come across as a person who's even worthy of her time. And that's what is interesting to me, because I refuse to believe that anybody who's truly liked someone has not gone through some version of this. And to explain it in such a simple manner is really, really beautiful. The movie has a lot of slapsticky moments where, there's this runaway stray toy airplane that kind of goes about creating havoc as and when required. It gets in the way of Charlie Brown's plans. And even when he does have everything, put together and he plans everything out, even then, things go wrong. And it's very typical, because it's about, circumstantial situations. It's about luck. And sometimes luck is just not on your side. So there's no foreshadowing, of course. So, this is not some kind of oh my gosh, this is going to have multiple perspectives. No, this is a very simple story, and it is just made to make a person smile. And that's what I like about this art of storytelling, because I was watching Pinocchio the other day on Netflix, and of course, Guillermo del Toro said we should stop talking about animation like something for kids. It is a medium of storytelling, because if you think about it, the story of Peanuts can only exist in animation. It cannot exist in, like if you do a live action version of it, it may not make sense. In fact, it'll feel very jaded. But because it is in animation, and because it is broken down in perspective of, like naivety, innocence, first love, there is I would say, a compulsion to animate it. You have to animate it so that the point comes across in its most pure form. When you kind of see Charlie Brown's character, he, even in the dance, even though he's prepared, he trips, I think, in a puddle of punch, and he ruins the whole party. And you will feel like, oh my gosh, this is so typical. They're gonna do a build up towards the end. And I kind of miss that sometimes in movies, where everything's gonna work out in the end, and you're still in it just so that you can enjoy yourself. And I think that's what this movie is. Like, everything's gonna go wrong, and it's still gonna have like a really happy ending. And I really like that about movies that are not trying to keep you in the dark. They're basically telling you, just sit down and have a good time. There's this, I think, recurring theme about signs from the universe. And Charlie Brown is supposed to hand in a book report, but he needs to do it with a partner, so they're picking out names from a bowl. And Charlie manages to pick up the name of the redhead, and he is so happy and he's so thrilled, because this was meant to be. Because, as you know, he has messed up two other chances, and now he can finally prove to her that he is worthy of her. So he finds out, however, that she has gone somewhere else to take care of her grandmother, so she won't be able to hand in a book report because she'll be missing school. So Charlie Brown takes it upon himself to find the best book in the world. Now, in the backdrop, Charlie Brown gives this IQ test of some kind, and he gets a perfect score. So everybody in the movie who was belittling him for being clumsy, for being silly, for being goofy, for not being, popular enough or cool enough, suddenly changed their worldview about him, because this is a man with high IQ, because he scored the perfect score, and they are encouraging him, and everything he says is perfect. Like, he made something stupid in art class that is considered genius. He fixed a minor issue with a light bulb. He's considered, the world's next engineer. When somebody said, "Oh, I need your help for, figuring out which book I should write a book report on," and he suggested a comic book, and they're like, "Oh, can we do a book report on a comic book? My gosh, aren't we silly to have not listened to Charlie Brown before?" Because now he has, the proof that he's, all these big guns, because he's a very smart person, apparently, as per the IQ test. And he, with the help of his friend, finds out that he needs to maybe do a book report on War and Peace. And it's this really big, fat book. And when he enters the library, and I think that scene is so pretty, he kind of walks around to figure out, whether he can get like a thinner book. And then, of course, when he finally finds War and Peace, he is overwhelmed with its size. But he decides that, nope, I'm definitely going to make this work, and I'm going to impress her and finish the book report for her. And that way she'll be thankful to me, and we'll, become friends, and perhaps we'll become a couple. And you see him completely outside of his comfort zone, because maybe two scenes before he's shown like this comic book of, I think it was called Sparkplug or something, and it had like, this really cartoonish character. From that to Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace, he has gone completely outside of his comfort zone to impress her. But because of that, over a weekend, he reads War and Peace, and he has now read something that he can learn from. And he's acquired this newfound knowledge and this newfound intellectual prowess. And he is going to use all of this to improve his personality. So every opportunity that comes his way is his way of making sure that he can become a better version of himself. And that's what is interesting to me about this kind of love, because a lot of people talk about unrequited love and unreciprocated love, and this isn't about that, right? Because in this kind of love, you don't need the other person to love you back, because this is a crush. This is the part of falling in love with a person where the person that who you do like, who you do admire, who is the object of your affection, is unaware, is in the dark about you or about the love you have for them. So he can love her even when she's not around him. He can love her even when she doesn't exist. And that is so innocent and so pure that it makes you realize all the times, where the phase of the crush, and why it is so beautiful is because you have ample opportunity to, completely lose your mind. But instead, you choose to go through it steadily because you want to enjoy the crush. You want to enjoy the process. And I think there is something so beautiful about the time when you have your first love. You create perhaps an image even of the person, even if it's not an accurate depiction of them, but it exists in your mind just for you, very selfishly. And that kind of love is adorable because it's innocent, and there is nothing really to be said about the purpose of it. It exists because it exists, and you may get nothing out of it, but in this case, Charlie Brown develops a lot of skills in the process of it. So Charlie Brown is now a transformed person. He performed in the dance show. He helped out his sister in the talent competition. He did a lot of things that has changed his image in society. So after scoring the highest in an IQ test, everyone is now rooting for him. And you'll see that if a person believes in you, you tend to do a lot more. And now, because his friends believe he's very intelligent, he managed to read the War and Peace book. A week ago, that would have not been possible. Anyone you see who grew up in toxic friend circles, will be a little more insecure. A person who had parents who did not show a lot of faith in them will perhaps struggle to even do easy things. But now, because all his friends are rooting for him, he's managing to do so much better. And that is very interesting because in the beginning of the movie, he has no confidence. And then he scores high on the IQ test and he has a lot of confidence, not because he scored high on the IQ test, but because of the way people around him are perceiving him. They're perceiving him as a genius. And um, no matter what, people think at the end of it, when you are single-mindedly focused on something, you don't really care about the rest. You don't really focus on the rest. And that's why Charlie Brown's character is so cute, because he has changed his image for society. But that was not his intention. That was a byproduct of his pursuit of the redhead girl. And I don't want to spoil the end, obviously. I want you to enjoy it. I want you to tell me what you think about it. And let me know if you have read the comics, and if felt like perhaps you like the movie after you read the comics, or maybe you didn't like the movie, or maybe you've not read the comics at all and you watched the movie and you loved it as much as I did. I don't know. Let me know, because I would love to get some feedback from you guys. We did another movie last week, and it is actually based on, again, childhood and teenage years. It's called Vajda. It's a great film. And if you have not watched it and you're skeptical of the premise of it, because it's a bit of a serious topic, although it is very hearty and very, very feel good, um, please check out the that podcast. And I have posted the link of it. It'll show up at some point at the end of this video. And if you've already, watched the movie, and you want to hear a scene by scene analysis, it's still a really good watch for you as well. So please like, share, and subscribe. Do tell me what you think about this video. Please, please